1, 2, working now. I have eaten some food, refueled and ready to rumble. Just wait for some people to actually get in. So we've still got the 780s on the test bench. Move some bits and bats around so I can put the camera closer to the screen so you can see it better now as well. There you go. I've got one person watching now. Right, we shall begin. So what I'm planning to do is show you how the tweaks from NVIDIA Inspector affect the Firestrike score. So I'm going to bring you in to the screen, and I've got NVIDIA Inspector open. Everything is at stock speed. So the first run we're going to do is going to be with these settings here. So we're going to have the AA replay mode on all. We're going to have the AF on off. We're going to have allowing a negative LOD bias of 4. We're going to have the texture quality filtering on performance, and we're going to have the power management prefer maximum performance. We're going to have vertical sync off, and we're in GPU count 2 because got 2 cards in SLI, so obviously we want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one run at these settings here. Then I'm going to put the LOD down to 0 so it's effectively off. Then I'm going to put this super sampling mode onto off/multi-sampling. And then finally I'm just going to restore the current profile to NVIDIA defaults. So we're going to run it 4 times. This is just stock speed. I haven't actually put any overclocks on. We're just going to run normal Firestrike. So as you can see, both of them are at the stock speed out the box. Nothing fancy. Just want it to be stable and consistent throughout these runs. Got a piece of paper to note down the scores as well. So this is the first run. This is purely for science reasons more than anything else. Fortunately, Fire Strike isn't too long. So for the person who has just joined, I'm currently showing you how the tweaks that I use in NVIDIA Inspector affects the Fire Strike score with these particular 780s in SLI. Okay, so we've got the first score. So 15,501 overall with a 18K graphics, a 23K CPU and a 5,697. So I'm just going to take a print screen of that and I'm just going to crop that bit and save it onto the desktop as FS1. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go back into NVIDIA Inspector, and this time we're going to turn off the LOD. So we're going to change the LOD bias to 0, press apply. We're going to fresh open Fire Strike again. I'm not going to reboot every time. We'll open Fire Strike fresh again, run it again. Now you'll see this time you'll be able to see the FPS. The textures won't be all blurry or as blurry, and it should just look generally a lot nicer. So you can see textures are no longer blurry. You would be able to see the FPS counter if the camera wasn't terrible. It's getting about 80 and 90 FPS, 110, 90, still 90, 95, 92, 93, 89. It's around 100 FPS. GT2. Now again, you can't see the FPS counter, but you can clearly see that the textures are a lot sharper even just on the webcam. Getting about 80 FPS here, 75, down to 57, 58 here. in the physics test, just dips below 70 occasionally, most of the time hovering around 73 to 75, peaking at nearly 80 FPS. Finally combined. It's getting about just under 30 FPS most of the time, 25, 30 FPS. Okay, so the score has gone down, so we've got 15,342, which is down 160 points on the last score. Graphics score 18,337, down nearly 200 points. Now the physics score is not really affected very much by the LOD. We got 23,100 last time and we got 23,037 this time, so that's within margin of error in my opinion. The combined test has gone down by about 70 points, but again we will just print screen this quickly and cut out that bit so we have a record of these scores so we can look at them all together at the end. This one will be called FS2. So now for the third run we're going to change the AA mode to off/multi-sampling and press apply. So we're going to freshly open Firestrike again. Run again. So for the person who has just joined the stream, we're currently I'm currently showing you how the LOD and other tweaks in NVIDIA Inspector affect the score that the PC is getting in 3D Mark Firestrike. So far we've run with 4 on the LOD bias, and we've run with all of the other tweaks on with a 0 LOD bias, and now we're running with the AA replay mode on off/multi-sampling rather than replay all. And typically that person left before I even finished saying all that, so whatever. So after I've done these tests to show people, I will then move on to 3D Mark Vantage, and that needs a slightly different set of settings to put into the NVIDIA Inspector thing. So yeah, you'll be able to see those as well. Oops. Just knocked the tripod a bit there. Combined test again. So 15,342 last time was the overall score. So this time we've got 15,323. Now that is probably within margin of error. However, the GPU score is actually about the same. The CPU score has gone down, and the combined test score has also gone slightly down. So that setting doesn't affect the score as much as the LOD, but once you get to higher clock speed it does actually have more effect. We are at stock speeds on these GPUs at the moment. It will vary how much it affects performance from CPU to CPU as well, depending on what CPU you're using. So the final test that we're going to do is we're just going to restore the NVIDIA defaults on this profile, so everything is back to default now, I think. So it'll be on quality, adaptive performance, all of that nonsense, and we're going to apply these changes even though we've just reset it to default. And we're going to run it one final time, but actually I need to screenshot that thing first before I forget, so that if anyone joins the stream later on or in the future, I have this to refer back to as a tool. Call this FS3. There we go. Right. Close that. Keeping testing the same. Close 3D Mark. Open it back up again. Yep. I'm glad it helps someone. Obviously for some pro guys this wouldn't really help at all, but for the people who don't know these things, like I didn't when I started, these things are sometimes very hard to find out. It's similar for AMD, apart from you don't need NVIDIA Inspector to do the same kind of things for AMD. There's a couple of tools that you need for AMD. One is Catalyst Control Center, or the graphics settings thing. From there you can turn the AA off or down to 2 times, and same with the AF. You can set your quality texture to performance, and you can also turn tessellation off for DX11 benchmarks on AMD cards within the driver itself, or within Catalyst Control Center, which makes it very easy, which you can't do on NVIDIA. Then to use LOD, you can only use it on DirectX 9 titles for AMD, as far as I know, or as far as I've tested tools out so far. And there's a tool called ATI Set LOD, or LOD, and that allows you to type in literally any number. You press set LOD, open up your benchmark, press run, and you can tell straight away whether it's working or not. So that's the other thing as well. You should be able to find these tools on either HardwareBot or by googling it. However, I suppose I could put a link in the description for those lazy people out there. who can't Google things. If I can find a download for them myself. ATI set lod. There we go. Let's see if it's here somewhere. ATI set lod. Right, let's see if this link works. Yep, it does indeed. Nice. So I will put a link to that. This is for AMD. And it has also finished. I've been saying that. So let's have a look. So as you can see, the score is again lower, which is the correct direction. So the previous score was 15,323. It's now only scored 15,272. The graphics score has gone down nearly 100 points, from 18,335 to 18,263, and the CPU score has also gone down yet again by about 100 points, and the combined score is actually about the same as last time. So that kind of rounds up how the LOD and how certain settings can affect your score with SLI 780s in Firestrike. So just a quick recap, because you haven't got my notes of all of the scores that we've just made. I'll try and get them all on the screen at once. So got FS3 and FS4. Okay, so well, I didn't manage to crop FS2, I'll have to just zoom in. This one. Okay, so we went from 15,500 down to 15,342, down to 15,323, down to 15,272. Now obviously if you were doing this, you'd be going the other way, because you'd apply your power saving features or disable the power saving things and put it in performance mode first. Then you'd put it in AA mode, replay all, and then finally you would test your LOD. Now the other thing I should mention, between here and here is a huge jump, you'll notice. That's because the LOD that I used for this score was pretty spot on for this CPU and GPU combination to run Firestrike. Now with your setup, what you're going to have to do is, I'd recommend starting around 2 on the LOD and probably work it up in 0.5. So say go 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.55, up to probably about 8. And it varies from different benchmarks, but on Firestrike I'd suggest not going much higher than 8 really. You'll see, if you note the scores down each time for all 3 tests, you'll see sort of the pattern, and you want to pick your best one and then maybe try a few different LOD settings around there, see what your system likes. The other thing that I should mention as well is when you change your LOD, or when you change your clock speed rather, sometimes the optimal LOD setting will change. So say I've run this at stock on 4 LOD and got my highest score. If I then overclock these cards to 1300 megahertz and run again, say 3.75 might get me a higher score than 4 did at stock. So what you actually want to do is max out your cards before you start playing with the LOD. But the other thing to consider as well, sometimes if you have really high LOD, the cards can't clock as high. So you've got to balance all these things, do a lot of testing yourself to find the perfect LOD. But for this particular setup on GTX780s, on the Ryzen system, and this also applies for everything from a 780 to a 660 Ti, on the NVIDIA Kepler side of things, I usually find 3 to 4 LODs usually correct on most systems. So that is the explanation of that anyway. Hello. Right, to use the LOD, I've put the link to the AMD version of it in the chat, or not in the chat, in the description. I don't know whether a live stream even has a description, but I will also try and find NVIDIA Inspector. What version's my version of Inspector? Because I have a special one. Because I don't think if you just download any old random one, it generally doesn't work. So mine's 1.9, 1.9.6.6, and mine is the unlocked LOD version. So mine's called NVI Unlocked LOD. So I think in some cases it isn't locked, or it isn't unlocked rather, and you can't set the LOD. But I'm not 100% sure on that. Anyway, I'll post a link for a download of the latest version of NVIDIA Inspector, which is listed on HardwareBot. This LOD works on DirectX 11, 10 and 9 for the NVIDIA Inspector version, by the way. I don't know about DX12. I haven't used DX12, in case someone asked. I have put that in the description, a link to that. Right, okay. I didn't know you need MS.NET 4.0 installed for Inspector to work. That's fair enough, that's probably worth noting. So, anyway, that is enough of the teaching things. Because I'll probably do that in a separate video that I'll put on my channel as an actual video rather than in a live stream. Because then people will obviously watch that rather than seeing it halfway through a 30 or 2 odd hour live stream. So anyway, we're going to run Vantage now on these 780s. And for the people who weren't here in the first stream or earlier, I will give you a look at the setup that we're currently using. just before we start. Just take you off the tripod a second. So here we have got, I don't know what happened to the colours, but it's washed out all the colours, whatever. We've got a Ryzen 7 1800X at 4.1 GHz, which I actually need to reboot and change that because that's too fast. So we've got a Ryzen 7 1800X, which will be at 4.05 GHz very shortly. We've got a reference GTX780, which is the top one. It's water cooled by an Aqua Computer GTX Titan water block. And we've got two SLI bridges connecting the two 780s. The bottom one, as you might have guessed, is Gigabyte WindForce. This is the Gigahertz edition one, so it is slightly faster, and it's air cooled, so it's not actually as fast as the water cooled one. The water cooled one has a custom BIOS with a massive power limit on, because otherwise it would power throttle all the time under water cooling at the high speed and voltage that the extra temperature headroom allows us to go to. We are using the 1080 radiator to just cool a single graphics card, so totally overkill. Got 7 fans running. We have the fan splitter thing there, and we also have the good old pond pump for the water pumping. So that is the system. Oh yeah, and we've also got the Galaxy Hall of Fame, or Galax Hall of Fame GOC 2016 edition memory. So there is that as well. That's Samsung BDI, obviously. Right, I'll just get the background colour set up. There we go, so you can see the screen. So I'm going to go through briefly the settings needed an inspector to run Vantage. So for Vantage, generally I run a much higher LOD setting than I would for 3D Mark, Firestrike and Co. So it's actually already been set in here for some reason, but basically you want the AA mode on super sampling again, but this time instead of replay all, you want the AX sparse grid, and again you want on here, you want performance, you want to force that off, you want your power settings correct and prefer maximum performance and all that. You want to turn off the AF, of course, and you want to override any application setting for the AA mode. Gamma correction can stay off. Now for LOD, because this will be quite high FPS on a low clocked CPU, I'm going to start at 6. Actually we'll start at 6.5 and work our way up. With Vantage you can need anywhere from 6 to 15 LOD, and it is very dependent on what cards or card you're using and what CPU you're using as well, because it's quite high FPS benchmark with a lot of cards. So we're going to open Vantage, obviously. It'd be difficult to run it without it. Now for Vantage I usually keep the screen resolution a little bit higher, 1280 by 768, mainly so I can change this more easily, because you can't press apply when it's 800 by 600, and also it cuts off the side of your screen if you go into 800 by 600, so just bear that in mind. Now you can, the key for 3D Mark Vantage is now on the 3D Mark website, so you can upgrade it to Advanced or Professional Edition. I already had a key, so I've only got Advanced. You can untick all of these feature test, which is under the options. If you don't register your copy of Vantage, I think you have to see the subscores online, so you have to have the internet plugged in, and you can't turn off these feature tests, and it takes like a week to run. So I'd recommend doing that. Now, to find the max clock speeds of your card, if you're starting from scratch with a GPU, I would recommend turning your CPU tests off and only running GT1 and 2, so you don't waste your life running it 100 times, especially when you're doing your LOD testing. However, because we've already tested these cards quite extensively in 3D Mark Firestrike earlier on in the previous stream, we're just going to kind of leave the CPU tests on and go for it at similar settings to what we were using before. So again, we're going to go probably around 1280 millivolts on the voltage for the gigabyte card. Fan at 100%, whack the power limit up full. We're going to start about 180, and I think 600 again on the memory, or plus 600 on the memory rather. This should take us to about, I think it'll be 1267 megahertz, and we will try and match that with the water-cooled card as well. Should be around 270-ish megahertz on this one, or plus 270-ish, and again plus about 600 on the memory. Now obviously I don't need to turn the fan speed up for that one, so give it a little bit more voltage because Vantage is quite a long test, and we will run, see how it goes. Now you'll notice in Vantage, you know when your LOD is enabled, because the loading screen is actually blurred as well as the rest of the benchmark, so everything's always blurry. See, you can see there it's all blurry, but that's because the actual camera's blurry, but it is blurry on the actual screen as well, even if it does confuse the camera. So this is quite a long benchmark, so if you want to get some biscuits or whatever, I'd highly recommend it. So we're getting about 300 FPS right off the bat, so it is a very high FPS benchmark. You're probably better off with a higher clocked CPU for this test rather than like a Xeon or something. No, unfortunately, what happened with the second motherboard RMA is I actually asked for a Taichi or a gaming K7, but preferably a Taichi, and unfortunately when they finished my RMA, they basically decided that because both of the boards that I'd asked for weren't in stock, they'd just send me another Prime Pro. So we've got another Prime Pro. I couldn't be bothered to send it back again. I have actually considered buying a Taichi, and I've considered buying a BioStar GT7 also, but basically I can't be bothered at the moment, because the thing is, I really want a board that can do 4-way SLI, and none of those boards regardless can do 4-way SLI, which is kind of sad. I do kind of want the base clock overclocking, but I don't know whether it's worth getting a whole new board just for the base clock overclocking. So I'm just going to stick with this for now. and see what happens with the Threadripper CPUs and X399, because I'll probably end up getting a 10 or 12 core one of those for 3D benching anyway, and yeah, I'll probably just stick to the one X370 board and just have an X399 board for benching instead, basically, because they'll have more cores, more threads, more memory bandwidth, more PCIe lanes, which is exactly what I wanted with this 8 core. But AMD have actually decided the 8 core CPUs and 6 core CPUs mainstream, which is great, because Intel have basically been telling us you must have a 4 core on the mainstream platform for 7 or 8 years now. So AMD have actually made some progress, which is nice. Yeah, Buildzoid did moan a lot about that ASRock board. Wow, you would not believe it. Every other reviewer, I know TTL reviewed the ASRock Taichi recently as well and had a lot of problems with it. But he didn't say anything about the BIOS resetting itself all the time. But at least that's fixed now, so that's good. But yeah, the problem is with the ASRock board is, even though it's good, it doesn't have onboard power buttons, which is kind of annoying. It means I have to use these switches down here on the test bench, which annoys me. The crosshair is too much, considering it doesn't have dual BIOS, doesn't have PLX chip. The VRM isn't as good as the Taichi. If you go up to the ASRock Gaming Professional, it comes with loads and loads of crappy LEDs and fancy bits which you don't need. You pay an extra 40 quid over the Taichi. Yes, you get buttons, but it's not worth the extra 40 quid for buttons. The BioStar GT7 is actually is weirdly the best board. The VRM on the GT7 is better than the Crosshair Hero. Not as good as the Taichi, but better than the Crosshair Hero. It has dual BIOS, it has onboard buttons, and it's the cheapest. It's £177. The only problem with the BioStar board is it's a BioStar board. I haven't got anything against BioStar, but that's interesting, it's blue screen on the CPU test. I haven't got anything against BioStar, but I don't think their BIOS support and LN2 overclocking support will be quite as good as the other manufacturers who are a bit bigger. So I'm just going to leave it for now. But if I was going to get a board for 24/7, I would honestly go with a BioStar GT7 or the Taichi. The problem is with Gigabyte, it's a gaming board. Yes, exactly. Need base clock and multiplier buttons. Everything should have buttons. And indeed, blue screen Kappa. We'll just give it more volts and everything will be fine. Exactly. My idea of a perfect board is actually a board that I've re-got again. I had one of these for 2 weeks, quite a while ago. Don't bring the power supply. So this here, what I'm about to show you, which I'm just getting out from under the desk, is the best board ever created for overclocking. Genuinely, it does not get any better than this. This board is actually perfect. This here is perfection. X58 buttons which don't require any software in the BIOS or in the Windows to use. You can just press those buttons and they do things. All of the caps around the socket, not the roundy ones which are really hard to insulate round, they're all flat, perfect. The heatsink is like in a nice square, so it's very easy to insulate. You can see this one's got Vaseline on it. And then the rear I/O, look at that, 2 PS2 ports for both keyboard and the mouse. Basic stuff. No drivers required. No drivers required USB 2 ports for USB sticks. You don't need onboard audio on an overclocking board, so what's the point? And then 2 USB 3 ports, just in case you do decide you need to move some big files across. It's got loads of fan headers, it's got dip switches, voltage probe readouts, extra power via SATA for the PCI Express slots. It's got 3 linked to the chipset, 3 sets of SATA ports linked to the chipset. When you're doing super high base clock overclocking, you've got a third-party SATA controller which doesn't cold bug, which isn't affected by the PCIe clock, and you've also got another SATA power down here. That's 2 for these 4 lanes, so you don't burn out your 24 pin. Postcode reader, fan headers everywhere, voltage read points, dip switches for memory slots, clear CMOS button, dual 8-pin power. This board right here is perfection. Perfection. The I/O, perfect. Massive heatsink, perfect. The only thing that could make this board better, honestly, is if it had like 3 DIMM slots. Other than that board is just perfect for overclocking. Obviously for daily use it's actually terrible, but for overclocking you want one of those, hands down, every time. So anyway, back to doing Vantage on the SLI now that I've stopped fanboying over the X58 AOC. So hopefully this time we won't get a blue screen. And I've totally worn my voice out talking about that X58 AOC. Is actually going really badly now, which is pretty funny. But that is a damn good board. Actually the SOC Champion's pretty good as well. The X99 one. Well, the problem is with those, they die all the time. Unlike the X58 AOC, which is a tank of a board, just goes forever. Oh, the power delivery on the X58 AOC is good for like 1500 amps or something stupid. I can't remember the exact phase count. I think it's a 8+8 or an 8 that's doubled if I remember correctly. I will check on my VRM list. Gigabyte X58 AOC. Oh, it's actually 12, is it? Yeah, it's actually 12. It's a 6+1 that's doubled, basically. But they are the highest quality caps Gigabyte could buy at the time, and MOSFETs and all that. It's quite funny actually, because the UD9 has 24 phases on a 6+1, so they've actually tripled. They've actually tripled each phase on the UD9. And then the UD7 had the same VRM as the X58 AOC. So the UD9 is in theory better, but it isn't. The problem is with the X58A UD9, firstly they're £1,000,000. Like literally you try and buy one for under £500. It's insane. And secondly, they have all the extra SATA controllers and Ethernet ports and USB controllers that will break and go wrong. So there's loads more traces on the board to interfere with stuff. So the X58 AOC is pretty much perfect. Yeah, well the thing is about 32 phases is that's just lots and lots of doubled phases, basically. I think the Gigabyte Z77 UP7 has like 30 odd phases as well. No, it must be 32, not 36. Yeah, that's it, 32. It's basically, you get an 8 plus 0 and you double it to 16 and then you double the doubles to 32. So that's all a 32 phases. It's just a load of doublers. I think once you get past 16 it doesn't really make a difference, especially on a Z77 or Z87 board where you can only use a 4-core CPU. So it's not like you're drawing 1,000 watts from the CPU or whatever. Like that X58 AOC, you have to remember that's got 6-core CPUs that are 32 nanometers on it, and they're pretty damn power hungry on LN2. Is like a 990X or a 980X. The power consumption would be huge compared to any Z87 chip or any Z77 chip. I did actually watch that final on the replays on OCTV. It was quite good. The thing that got me about that, best bit for me, is when they literally started that competition and Dankop went into the BIOS, literally plugged in every single setting under the sun in that BIOS and then just booted straight away at like 6.7 gigahertz, and I was literally like, what the hell? Because he will have developed or helped develop that board, so he'll know it inside out. But I have never ever seen someone go into a BIOS and literally set every single setting and voltage within 2 minutes, then boot straight into Windows and get a score that the other guy never even reaches during the whole competition with his first score. It was insane. Absolutely insane. That was crazy. Now hopefully this time it won't blue screen on the damn CPU tests, so I've given it slightly more volts. So cross your fingers. Yeah. Truffman is quite annoying when he shouts blue screen all the time. I think he should get a condenser mic, so or a condenser on his mic rather, so that when he shouts really loud, you can hear that he's shouting, but you can't. It doesn't like destroy his microphone. 'Cause it is really annoying, especially if you're wearing headphones. Whoops. nearly unplugged the camera there. So, 55 minutes in, and we haven't managed to complete one run advantage yet. This is going well. Right, there we go. That is, in my opinion, quite a decent run actually. There you go, you can see that. So, let's see where we're at in terms of pointage and such. So, our old score that we had, which I put in chat a while ago, which I will now put in chat again, is there. And that was 49,611. We've got 66,000. It's a big improvement. We were nearly last though. So I'm just going to go up the rankings and check where we are. Okay. So we're in the top 50 out of 76, which isn't amazing, but whatever. Here we go, 66,000 puts us in 42nd place, which doesn't get us any points really, but it's a vast improvement on last time, so I'll take it. Now the funny thing is, whoops, because of the lower clock speed of the Ryzen CPU, unfortunately the GPU tests take quite a big FPS hit, because we actually scored 71,000 on the GPU score with an i5 at 4.7, and we're only scoring 67,000. Now that could also do with the LOD, so we haven't got that dialed in yet, but I don't think the LOD is going to get us 4,000 points. Might get us a couple of thou, but not 4,000. Now the other thing as well is, I don't know what clocks we were running at then. 1254, that's pretty slow actually. So we've got plenty of headroom on the clock speed of the cards as well, which is quite nice. So we've got potential LOD gains and potential clock gains on both the memory and the core. So GTX780, $12.54 and 18.03. Mark Vantage P666. Okay, right then. I have a feeling the CPU will be bottlenecking us here in terms of FPSs, but we'll soon find out anyway. So what we'll do is we'll whack up the core clock a bit on the gigabyte card and see if that helps. Hopefully it will. I want to get into the top 30 really, because then we're just over, sort of halfway up the ranking. That would be nice. Need to move this box, which I took out to show you that X58 board. In the last 7 minutes, not much to be honest. We managed to run Vantage and we got a score of 66,000. I presume you weren't watching earlier, you didn't comment earlier, so I'll just give you a quick run through of the setup while it's doing Vantage. So we've got the 1800X with the air cooler on at 4.05 gigahertz, 4.075 gigahertz rather. We've got a reference GTX780 with a custom BIOS with an Apple computer GTX Titan full cover water block, and then we've got a gigahertz edition GTX 780 Windforce X3, 2 SLI bridges, 1080 rad, just in case you haven't noticed. We've got some extra fans blowing at the gigabyte card, and got some Galaxy or KFA2 or whatever they're called, because they're called a different thing everywhere. Hall of Fame GOC 2016 edition B-die memory, and the XMP on that is 4000 megahertz, and obviously we're running it on Ryzen, so it has got zero chance of ever hitting 4000 megahertz. Well, on Ryzen, on this version of Ryzen anyway. On future versions, I suppose there'll be potential to go higher, but at the moment there's no chance of that happening. But we are running 12, 11, 11, 11, 28 on the timings, so they're pretty tight. Thanks very much for joining us, Mark. Enjoy your GTX 285 benchmarking. In fact, that is one of the worst things about watching a live stream of someone else benchmarking, is it makes you want to do benchmarking and overclocking. This is actually one of the reasons why I like doing these live streams. I haven't done one for a while because, well, firstly that was dead, then I didn't have B-die. So, yeah, I haven't really felt like it, to be fair. But hopefully we'll be back streaming. Now the other problem is at the minute is the weather. It's currently like, well, it's not hot by like normal people's standards, but I don't like it when it's hot. I like it when it's cold, like 18 degrees. So couldn't get in earlier. Wasn't it University great? Yep. Oh yeah, the RAM is spectacular. I had to jump on that very quickly. There would have been a line of people queuing up to buy that RAM otherwise. I did have some G-Skill 3600 C16 which I got just a couple of weeks ago. And I was planning on keeping that for ages because that's all you need for Ryzen. I mean, that does 3200 easily, but I just saw this Hall of Fame RAM come up. I was like, I am not getting that, because it's really rare, does not come up very often, and it's really good. And one of the key things about this particular kit is this kit of B-die here, when I was running on LN2, had some serious issues. Like as soon as it was below -10, 55 on the postcode for days, dead RAM, supposedly, because it was too cold. This RAM here has been tested with a Kaby Lake CPU, full pot LN2 next to it, for like maybe 2-3 hour bench sessions, and it doesn't cold bug all the time, which is great. Really useful, especially for someone like me who is a bit of a noob on LN2. Yeah, it really doesn't help when, oh my god. Basically, when I was running LN2 a couple of weeks ago, I was running my 1800X on a Crosshair 6. I'd never used a Crosshair 6 before. I'd never run Ryzen on LN2 before. I've only run LN2 like twice ever anyway, or 3 times maybe. And the RAM kept getting too cold, and everything cold bugged. The CPU wouldn't boot up like 90% of the time. My mount was terrible. This score that's on the screen currently is also terrible. So we'll try a different LOD. But that is besides the point, really. Yeah. Basically, everything went wrong when I tried Ryzen on LN2. Even though I had a Crosshair 6 motherboard from Asus to use specifically for that purpose. So that was quite sad. Yeah, it all went wrong. It was a nightmare. And this RAM should help fix that. There's a couple of things that should help fix that. 1, experience. 2, my insulation skills, which was partly experience and partly me being a complete tool on the first day and not insulating the board properly at all. And 3, the RAM. And then 4 was pot mount, which again is experience. So now this is another thing as well. I'm getting more LN2 on the 30th of May, and I will be in Liverpool at my mate's office where the LN2 is, where I've ordered it to, and where my dues currently are, till the Thursday the 1st of June, which is 3 days. I've got 80 litres of LN2, and I'm going to be benching probably 775, probably maybe Ryzen, and probably maybe whatever else I bother to take and that actually works when I run it on under LN2. So there is a possibility that will be live streamed, but there is also a possibility it won't be live streamed. I might just do a video of it. And there is also a possibility that because I'm a massive noob on LN2 and need to concentrate on what I'm doing. Oh, look at that texture flicker though. And I might not live stream or video it at all. I did think about videoing it last time, but it was going so wrong. And it was being live streamed anyway, but on my mate's channel, that it just failed completely, and I couldn't really do much in terms of live stream / video because I didn't even know what I was doing, so doing a video would have been pointless. Yes, indeed, I do need to get my hands on a HOF card. At the moment, I'm not trying too hard to get a 980 Ti, but they're starting to come down into that price range where they are quite tasty in terms of the price and the speed. So I'm kind of like, I want a 980 Ti for 200 quid, but I'm looking at getting like a Hall of Fame, a Kingpin edition, or a Lightning. Obviously all of those are quite rare and usually hold the value better than the other ones. So it's just a case of finding the deal. It's being at the right place in the right time. I like to get those RAM sticks. Like that GTX780 there, that gigabyte one. 80 quid, buy it now on eBay. When most of them were 100 to 120. And they got a stock picture. The description was like EVGA Windforce 780 I thought this card is going to come, it's either going to be smashed up or it's going to be the wrong card, or some plebs selling it and it doesn't even work, or it's just a scam, but whatever, I'll give it a try. And look, it's a great card. It does like 1306 on the core, and it has Samsung memory that's fairly decent. So, to be fair, if it had one of those plate things for the VRM and memory, rather than directly touching onto the actual heatsink, I could put a universal water block on that and run that underwater as well, and I suspect it'd be pretty damn good underwater with that card, especially if I did a bit of tweaking with the power limit and maybe a shunt mod on it. But to be fair, when I do actually play games, which is kind of never, but when I do, I usually use that card. For NVIDIA games anyway. Obviously for AMD games I use an RX 480 or the Fury, or a Fury depending on which is available at the time. But I don't actually play games, so it's kind of pointless. But I really like that 780, it's nice. I am planning on ditching the two reference ones that I've got, because I've got both full cover water blocks. But both the full cover water blocks will fit a GTX Titan, so I'm planning on ditching the two Ref 780s, get another pair of classified hydro coppers, and then keeping the water blocks from the Ref 780s and switching in Titans into those and doing a shunt mod. Probably not an E-power on the Titans, just a shunt mod and run them underwater, see what I can do. But yeah, anyway, that's all in the future. Short term, I want a Ryzen 5 6-core CPU. That is pretty much top priority at the moment. And other than that, I think that's about it. Obviously, if any card comes up that I fancy and it's on a really good deal, I do fancy another Fury, because I want a Fury that unlocks some damn cores, like a Strix. I've heard a lot of the Strix ones do, but not a lot of the Nitros do, but the Nitro cooler's better, so that's annoying. Anyway, we'll see what happens. For the moment, I just want a Ryzen 7 1600 or 1600X, because I need it for a competition. So I've split up the Ryzen CPUs into Ryzen 5. Oh, that's a much lower score now. It's even worse. It's interesting. Fair enough. We'll change the LOD, I think, because the score's actually going down every time we run. I forgot what I was saying now. Whatever, it didn't matter anyway. Just rambling. Alright, we're going to go up to 7.5. Run again. I think the CPU is the bottleneck. We might get stuck at 66,000. To be fair, for Vantage, the 5960X that I had was a lot better. I'm going to be honest. And it's purely because of the way Vantage works. I don't think it uses SMT, which is obviously a huge thing on Ryzen, and I think it likes the high clock speeds and the high instructions per clock, but not high instructions per clock and a high clock with the hyperthreading or with SMT. I think Vantage sort of only uses, say, 8 cores, 8 threads in the GPU part of things, and then it can use hyperthreading in the physics test, but I don't think it can use SMT, which is why this Ryzen CPU scores like 10,000 lower than a 5960X, even though in Firestrike the Ryzen CPU is slightly faster because the SMT is used, and it's slightly better than hyperthreading, even though the clock speed is a lot lower. The other thing as well about a 980 Ti Hall of Fame is there's like 3 different versions. There's like a special edition one that Galax sent out to specific people, like I know Ruff got one. Then there's an LN2 edition that's like a normal LN2 edition, so there's one with 3 8-pin PCIe on the back, there's one with 8 3-pin PCIe on the side, and then there's another one which is a regular one which only has 8 phases, which is just 2 8-pin PCIe slots. And I think the one with the 3 on the back is the one you want, because it has 16 phases, so it's an 8 phase that's doubled, and they're like literally 1 row VRM there, 1 row VRM there, and the GPU core over there and the power delivery over here, and it's just like lines and lines and lines of components leading to the GPU, and it looks beast. And now I've run out of things to ramble about. Yeah, indeed, the new GTX 1080 Ti HOF has 3 8-pins. However, if anything ever didn't need 3 8-pins, it's the 1080 Ti. Because those Pascal cards do not overclock well at all on LN2. They're rubbish. Absolute garbage. You only get like another, what, less than 5%? No, it's actually a bit more than 10% going from water cooling to LN2. Whereas most cards it might be 20 to 30%, I think. It's 300 megahertz, but say on a GTX 780 you get 300 megahertz, but you're going from like 1400 underwater to like 1800 at the low end on LN2. The percentage of that 300 megahertz at that speed compared to what it is at like 2100 to 2500 megahertz on like a 1080 Ti, there's a big gap in the percentage OC, and it's not very good. Yeah, the main problem is with the Pascal cards, to be fair, is Nvidia will not allow anyone to write their own BIOSes or unlock the BIOSes. So say for Kepler, for example, like these 780s, you get Kepler BIOS Tweaker, go into Kepler BIOS Tweaker, you can change power limits and loads of other stuff. It's perfectly safe as long as you leave a voltage like where it is. Perfectly safe to do so. With Pascal, the voltage is locked down incredibly. If the card goes below a certain temperature, it shuts off. If the power limit is wrong, it shuts off. If it's too high, it shuts off. If it's too low, it shuts off. It's just ridiculous. And then you can't modify the BIOS either on top of that. So even people who know what they're doing, who are capable of making a BIOS with higher voltage, aren't allowed to do so on a card which has a much better VRM than the Nvidia Flanders Edition one. Which, to be fair, on the 1080 Ti isn't actually that bad. But on the 1080 and 1070 and 1060 it's terrible. It's like they just put some components on and say, oh, this will do. Like you would with a reference card, but AMD, they kind of go the opposite way, because they put a really bad cooler on the reference cards, but usually a decent VRM, whereas Nvidia put a really rubbish VRM, but for a blower cooler, it's a decent cooler. I'm not saying it's a decent cooler, because it isn't, it's terrible, but it's a really high-end blower cooler, let's say. I mean, obviously something like this Gigabyte WindForce cooler is a lot better, and the stuff that's on like the Nitro Fury is just makes it look like a joke, to be honest. $63,000. The GPU score is still really low, interestingly. Go up to 9 on the LOD, see if that helps. Yeah, to be honest, second-hand 980 Ti, not bad now. You can pick up a second-hand 980 Ti for maybe 220 to 250 British pounds, and a 1070 will be like, what, 300 and something for the cheapest one, which is about the same performance. But in my opinion, a 1070 is nowhere near as cool. As in, if you have a 1070, in a couple of years no one's going to care that you have a 1070. A 980 Ti is like, well, at least that was a high-end card at the time, so it's kind of high, holds its value better, if you see what I mean. It's like a 970 versus, say, a 780 Ti. I mean, for what I do, folding at home, obviously a 970 is better because it's more power efficient, but brute force wise, a 780 Ti, much nicer card. The core on a 780 Ti is a serious core. It's got 2,880 stream processors. If you think about it like this, each time they make these cards more efficient, and the old one is, say, the equivalent processing power to the old one, it might be in a game, but in like raw performance it's just not as good. It's like getting a V8 that produces 500 horsepower versus a 2-litre turbo that produces 500 horsepower. The thing is, a 2-litre turbo is like, has turbo lag, doesn't really have that much power low down, it only has it right at the top end, it's not quite as smooth, it's just not as good, doesn't feel as good. Whereas when you're going in your V8 with 500 horsepower, it's kind of nice and smooth, linear, feels powerful. You can just tell by the amount of heat it puts off. Like a 1070, I mean, you get like one 8-pin power connector, it's probably putting off like 3 watts of heat. You put your hand next to it, it's not even warm. 780 Ti will warm your room up, you'll be able to feel the power. Exactly. I actually want the 780 Ti as well. I've got 5 780s and no Ti's. I did have a Ti actually for a day, but I didn't bench it or anything, I just tested it for a mate who I was sending it to in Hungary, so yeah, that was sad. That was a reference 780 Ti anyway though, so it would have been rubbish for OC. But yeah, I wouldn't mind a 780 Ti. The only thing that puts me off is the price of 780 Ti's compared to 780s isn't worth the extra performance. So, and with me having so much invested in 780s, for me to buy 4 780 Ti's at this point would cost a lot more, because it's a bit dusty, but I've got 2 of these, which is a 780 Hydro Copper Classified, and I want another 2 of those running 4-way. I don't really want to sell these either, because they'll be really nice to run on LN2 when I eventually get enough experience and skill to be able to hold a card like that. They'll be really nice cards to run 4-way on SLI, because there's a lot of people who have had a lot of experience. They've got a decent PCB. You can get a nice EV bot or classified controller to work with them. Change the voltage. They'll be a nice card to run on LN2, all those. Yeah. Reference cards with a custom BIOS and water cooling is alright. I mean, this 780 is alright, but the problem is you're always going to run into power limits of the VRM once you go onto liquid nitrogen, which is my end goal, which is why I want a higher end one. So if I was just running 4-way on water, I'd just stick with what I've got, because I've got two 780s underwater that are reference and two 780s underwater that are hydrocopper ones, so I could stick with those and run 4-way. But when I'm running 4-way LN2, if I ever make it that far, yeah, I don't want to be running reference cards because VRM's exploding, cold bugs, not things I want to be dealing with when I've got 4 cards to troubleshoot. Is your 780 Ti Hydro a classified or just a normal Hydro, or is it a for the win Hydro? Because some cards you can get a for the win Hydro as well, can't you? I think the GTX780 you can get a normal Hydro and then a for the win Hydro and then a classified Hydro as well. So I don't know. Yes, classified. That's a nice card, is that? I'd definitely rock one of those. Probably has the same PCB as the 780, to be fair. Would not be surprised. The best thing is as well, the 780 and the 780 Ti, or 780 Ti and the 980 Ti rather, on LN2 are like the most power hungry cards you can get. Like, those are the only 2 cards that can pull over 1000 watts peak under full load with a fat pot on them, which is pretty beastly. 150 quid on Fleabay a few months ago. That's not bad. That isn't too bad at all. There was a 780 Ti Wind Force, I think it was, on the OC UK members market today for £100, but the problem is at the moment the RX 480, which is in the mining rig behind the water cooling radiator, which you can't see, that may also have been around £100. So yeah, Kingpins are the holy grail. They are also impossible to find, and I think you can only get a 980 Kingpin and a 980 Ti Kingpin. I don't think, did they do a 780 Ti Kingpin? Not sure, because I remember the 980, the 780 classifieds and the 680 classifieds were like really, really nice, highly binned cards. And when they brought the Kingpin in, or before they did, when they had the classified 980s, everyone was like, oh, these classified 980s are really bad. They don't overclock very well, they're not binned as high as they used to be, and there's loads of them everywhere, what's going on? And they brought out the Kingpin, and it's basically EVGA adding SKUs on top of SKUs on top of SKUs. They have like 10 SKUs of every card ever. It's ridiculous. Yeah, that's why for a 980 Ti I'm looking for either a Kingpin, a Lightning, or a Hall of Fame. In fact, Matt, who was in the chat earlier in the first half of my stream, I don't know whether he's still watching or not, but he has a 780 Ti Lightning. £286 in USD. Yeah, there you go. Well, just put it this way, on the OC UK members market right now, there is a 980 Ti Lightning, an actual Lightning, for £240 posted, and I put an offer in of £200 and he refused it. The only problem is he's used it for mining for 18 months, and it's a fairly low, like 60 something percent ASIC. So although it's got a really nice PCB, and it will be decent on LN2, probably not going to be the best card on LN2 because of the ASIC. It'll need a lot of volts and it'll eat a lot of LN2 and be really power hungry. You want something around the 70, sort of 74 to 76 I think is the ideal. Once you go higher, you get the really good voltage scaling, but the clock's cut off really early for some reason, and I think below that it's just too power hungry. Needs too much voltage. Yeah, you need high ASIC if you're going for water, but once you get to LN2 you don't want to be going to like 80-90%. You want to be around mid 70s to high 70s, I think. Yeah, AMD is all over the place, it's ridiculous. Like, every single AMD card that I've got, I've overclocked it and the ASIC literally makes no difference. I've had 3 or 4 7950s and they're all totally random, nothing to do with the ASIC. You get one with like 50% ASIC that'll overclock to like 1200 megahertz at stock volts, and then another one that's 50% ASIC won't even be able to run at stock and will throttle and need loads of voltage just to run at stock. So yeah, AMD's all over the place on that front. Pot luck. But NVIDIA, it's pretty consistent, I have to say. Not so much once you get onto LN2, but ambient cooling wise, like air and water, the higher the better. Hall of Fame, to be honest, I don't actually like the aesthetic of the Hall of Fame cards. I think they're pretty ugly, but like I said earlier, I'm a function over form person anyway, so I mean, look at the test bench with its custom braided cables and its hardline tubing tied up with real string. It's actually good to have a couple of people or a few people talking in chat all the time, because the problem is, even when you've got like 10 or 11 viewers or whatever but nobody's talking in chat, it's like you just sit there and you just don't really know what to say. You just have to keep babbling on about the system. Wow, 2 GTX780 Matrix, nice. They're really nice cards of those. The PCB on them is really, really nice. Get away. Because the funny thing is, one second. The funny thing is all of the GTX 580s are all reference cards, and even if they're custom, they're terrible. Whereas the Matrix and Lightnings are the only ones with good PCBs, pretty much. In fact, I have one as well, but unfortunately mine's dead. It just blue screens. It's also a bit dusty, but as soon as you install the driver, it blue screens all the time. So it needs reballing, unfortunately. But I do keep it on the shelf, on the top of the shelf, and it is a nice heavy card. And it does also come with the plate under there for the VRM, so that when you're running it on LN2, the VRM doesn't get roasted. It's a great card. Absolute beast, triple slot as well. I've actually got a 280X matrix as well, but that's got a water block on it, but that's a similar kind of thing. It's got a 2-slot, it's got a 2-slot bracket mod, so as you can see, it's a 280X matrix, same PCB as a 7970 matrix. It's just got a bit of a step in it there to make it a bit taller. You can see how much taller it is at this end here in the slot. That's a really nice card. I actually need to bench that with this Ryzen CPU because I haven't benched it with the Ryzen CPU yet, so I'll probably might do a stream of that sometime. Yeah, you can get a Matrix Nvidia card. You can get a GTX780 Matrix. You can get a 980 Ti Matrix. You can get, I think, can you get a 780 Matrix? I don't know whether they did them for the 7 series actually. Oh yeah, those 285 Matrix. Do you know what? I had dibs on one of those in our UK chat. In fact, Mark, if you tell me your name on Skype or whatever, or what you called on Skype, I can add you to the UK overclocking chat thing if you are already in there. That's if you have Skype, of course. Obviously, Skype is actually the worst program ever. Especially on Android. Jesus Christ. Eats all my battery up. So annoying. Stream's going fairly well, I think. No drop frames. You don't have Skype. Good man. Do you have Telegram maybe? The good thing about the Skype chat is that when we're all bidding on stuff on eBay within the UK, obviously we make sure that we're not bidding against each other for these for these rare cards. So obviously they come up and there'll be like one lightning and say 3 of us in the chat will want it, and it's like if we're all bidding against each other we're just being stupid because you're bidding against basically someone who's into the same thing. You know, it's not just some random gamer who's getting it. It's a person who's actually benching. So you can never be told for Skype. We don't actually Skype as in like video chat, we just use it as like instant messaging like you would Snapchat or whatever, but obviously no one uses Snapchat because that's stupid. It's owned by Facebook. Facebook is the devil. Hey, on this last scene, by the way, it's getting up to 480 FPS. Just thought I'd let you know that fun fact. I noticed the score hasn't gone up at all yet. I think the CPU is seriously bottlenecking it. Yeah, you see that Gigabyte SoC 470 could have been someone in our chat who got that. There have actually been occasions where I've put dibs on something in the chat and then someone else has outbid me. I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh sorry, I didn't see it. But with those 285 matrices that you mentioned earlier, I had dibs on one of those and I actually missed the eBay listing, but one of the other guys who didn't see that I'd put dibs on it already, got it anyway, and then one of the other guys managed to get it, so that's good. So both of those cards, you'll be glad to know, went to people in the UK who do overclocking. One of them being Noxonite and the other being Obscure Paradox, or Lewis, as he is actually called. I don't think we're getting very far with this vantaging, I have to say. The speed is going up, but yeah, nothing else is. Kind of annoying. Maybe the LOD is too damn high. That could be the other issue. Maybe we're using too much LOD, because that is a thing. Time are we on? 9:15. Superb. It's getting pretty warm in here now, actually. These 780s do put out a lot of heat. Mark, what's your name on Hardware Bot? The silence in the chat. And someone stop watching. Probably Mark, because he has not responded. Ah. Yes. Plasma carrot. Okay then. I thought I did suspect that. I did suspect that. What team were you in before, by the way? Or were you in a team before? Hey, you have a Superflower Leadex 1300 as well. Nice. Good choice. Oh, the default UK one, that's sad. Oh, I'm glad you've joined MLG then. Have you been on the MLG forums at all? There's a lot of useful, well there used to be a lot of useful stuff on there as well. Not yet. You should probably check out the forum. There is some stuff on there that may be useful. There's also a bit called the Tweakers Pub in the hardware bot section. You'll need to ask permission from one of the mods of the forum, probably Overfiend or Hoodie, to put you into those. And there's quite a few things in there you might be interested in. Yeah, 8-pack was #1 in the world. So, yeah, he had a lot of points. He was #1 in the world for about a year, but he got fed up with it. He actually, in fact, that's where I got the giant phase cooler from. Yeah, it wouldn't go up so much when you joined, because 8-pack had literally like 2,000 or 3,000 points. I think he was, I'm not 100% sure, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure he was the first person to get over 3,000 points in the Elite League. That's the MLG forum, by the way, the section that you want to be in, because when we do the esports competitions that involve the whole team, it is useful to look on the forums as well, because as team captain I like to be able to organise people, because the problem is if everyone submits their scores at random times randomly, for certain benchmarks in the Team Cup and the Country Cup, you can only have so many people submitting so many different bits of hardware, and if you submit one bit of hardware you can't submit another bit of hardware in that category and all this. And what ends up happening is you'll get 3 people submit with a 2500K, and then no one could submit with a 2600K, and we lose purely because 3 people did the same thing, because we didn't work together as a team to delegate who would probably get the best out of benching whatever CPU or system. Now it has actually gone up this time, the score, that is. So we shall carry on. It's gone up by 1,000 points. Yeah, I'm in Leeds. I do quite regularly. Well, not quite regularly. I've been. This will be my 3rd time or 2nd time. I don't even know. No, it'll be my 3rd time. My mate's got an office in Liverpool. You'll notice there's another team in the UK called Player OC, I think it is, but with a 3 in it. He runs a review website, and basically that's the other sort of main active UK team, and so I go over to his office for LN2 purposes usually. I'll put a link to their page as well. Yes, Gary, I have put the NVIDIA Inspector link in the description. I don't know if that version has the unlocked LOD and whether it's the same as my version or not, but it should have unlocked LOD. Whereabouts are you in the UK, Mark? Oh, Peterborough. Oh, fair enough. The one you want, Gary, if you're running NVIDIA cards, is that NVIDIA inspector in the description. I don't know what version. I think that might be a newer version than mine, actually. You'll have to have a play around with it. If you've got any questions, you can ask me in the Skype chat or this chat. I don't know whether you were watching earlier, but I did actually go through all of the settings for Firestrike with the NV inspector as well. Yeah, Peterborough's kind of right in the middle of the country, isn't it? Well, it's kind of between Sheffield and London. And you're north of Peterborough, so... To be fair, I think there are quite a few people in the UK, like further down south than you, as well. That you should have a southern UK meet, to be honest. Somewhere down south. I'd probably go to that anyway. But the problem is, the only guy with an office willing to have people round for LN2 and stuff is Gav, and he's in Liverpool, so... Yeah, get them both, Gary. Good idea. That third link, which I've put in the description as well, by the way, that like forum thread or whatever it is, has loads and loads and loads of different tools for all sorts of things. There's MSI Afterburner MOA edition, Afterburner Extreme, Afterburner Hardware Bot edition, NVIDIA Inspector, that XOC SPI tweaker as well, which is two things underneath Inspector. That's great for SuperPi 32M. Process Lasso's good. I haven't used Quick Loader at all. The other thing that's supposed to be really good, which I've never used, is where is it? This D3D overrider thing. I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think that D3D overrider allows you to use LOD on DX11 on AMD. Yeah, that second one there. I think that one allows you to do LOD on AMD cards on DX11. There's also that AMD PS check. That's really useful for Phenom and AMD FX CPUs. 'cause it allows you to overclock a single core from within Windows. So when you validate a submission, it looks like you've got all 8 cores at 8 GHz when only one is. In AMD's case, anyway. Plus or minus 3. I think you've got the wrong version of Inspector if you can only go plus or minus 3. I don't know what mine goes up to, but it's like well over 100. Have you downloaded that version of Inspector that I linked and it only goes to plus or minus 2 or 3? Yeah, that's too much effort. I don't know what on earth this version I have, but it is amazing. I think alright, okay. Try the one I linked. I don't know whether it'll be the same as yours or not, but the version that I have personally is not from there. Someone sent me it on Telegram, I think. So I've had it for ages, and it's like it's copied in like a million different places so that I never use it. Because for like Vantage and stuff that I'm using now, you want 12 at least. And when you're running Unigine Heaven, generally it's more is merrier, all the way up to like 25 to 30, even if you've got a really fast CPU. By the time you get round to benching with that 5930K, Gary, it's gonna be it's gonna be a bit slow with all these rumoured AMD and Intel CPUs launching with like 10, 12 cores, unfortunately. The other thing you can try, no, it's not a record to have 8 watching. I have actually had up to like 12 before, but it's a record for this stream, as in this one today. The other thing you can do as well, Gary, is when you're running SLI, you could put the water block on the worst card and put the worst card at the top with the water block on, and put the better card on the bottom with the air cooler. Modify the BIOS of the top card so that your worst one has better cooling and a better BIOS so that it can keep up with the faster one on the bottom, so your SLI scores will go up higher as well. Definitely some interesting CPUs coming. I'm very excited. I think this is the highest, if not, I think it is the highest like percentage of cores going up since maybe even we went to dual core. So even when you go from dual core to quad core, right, the highest end desktop part you can buy at the minute is unlocked. It's 10 cores, 20 threads. AMD's highest core unlock part is going to be 16 and 32. That's 6 cores more. That's over 50% more cores unlocked. So even when we went from 6 cores, when we went from 4 cores to 6 cores, that was 50%. So this is like the highest percentage since we went from 2 to 4 cores. It's brilliant. Well, to be fair, if you look at the stock speed of the Ryzen CPUs now, like these 8 cores, and the 6 cores, and the 4 cores, they all clock exactly the same. If you look at the base speed on the 12, 14, 16 cores of the AMD ones from the leaked specs, they're pretty much the same as these. I think as long as you've got the cooling, as in underwater cooling, I reckon they'll clock about the same, 3.9 to 4 gigahertz, maybe 3.8 to 4 gigahertz. And the Intel ones, being Skylake rather than Broadwell, should be looking at 4.6 to 4.8 gigahertz, maybe even the good ones pushing 4.9 or over 12 cores. That's some serious horsepower. Oh, Intel will be sweating really bad because they have higher IPC, but they have higher core clock, but the SMT on AMD CPUs is crazy. Like, the simultaneous multi-threading is so much more efficient than hyper-threading, it's not even funny. Not even funny at all. And the IPC improvements of these new AMD chips as well is really, really nice. And the fact that Intel's flagship is going to be a 12 core and the AMD one's going to have 16, it's going to have like 25% more cores right out the box. Even the bottom AMD one has 10 at the bottom, and that's Intel's current top flagship £1,400 CPU, and AMD are going to have that as their low-end CPU. That is crazy. You're going to be able to get that performance with a low-end AMD. How hilarious is that? If I'd bought a 6950X with my own money, I'd be really triggered. Yeah, I reckon a 16 core. Let's think about this now. The 8 core, the Ryzen 7, which I've got here, that's just under £500, but the 1700 is like £320. So I'm going to say that the 10 core one is going to be very similarly priced to the 1800X. Around £500. I'm thinking maybe 600 to 650 for the 12, then maybe 800-900 for the 14, possibly pushing 1,000, and then I reckon the 16 core one will be 12 to £1,500. But the performance is huge. Like, the gains over what you can currently buy are actually worth that extra step. I mean, how much is a 16 core Xeon? I think a 16 core Xeon is just pushing over 2k, and it's not unlocked. These are unlocked CPUs. And it's not only that they're unlocked, they're high to start with. Even if you're on the damn things that stock, they're like 3.5 gigs on 16 cores. Yeah, AMD is still maturing on the BIOS and memory speeds. Yeah, this has been a nightmare. Basically, this is the third board that I'm on because it's bricked twice. The memory, my E-die won't even go above 2400 even though it's rated at 3866. If you have B-die it works fine. That works at 3200, that works at 3200. However, it won't cold boot. That is the thing, it won't cold boot at 3200 unless you run very, very loose timings like CL16. Not that that matters so much for benching. I think what they've done is they've used the Ryzen 7 and 5 as like beta testing. Or not beta testing, because it's not. They did test it, to be fair. But because it's such a new platform and AMD have never used DDR4, they haven't brought out a CPU for like 5 years basically. So it is a big step. So they've brought out the Enthusiast middle of the road because the meat of the market is either at the bottom in super high volume low price chips with like Dell and HP, and then the other big value market is right at the top with servers and stuff. You do not want either of those two ends to be getting beta stuff, so they've gone middle of the road. Gamers, enthusiasts, content creators, they can deal with all the bugs and work them out like Intel do with X99, and then we'll work it in for the noobs at the bottom and the enterprise stuff at the top later on once they've finished beta testing. So I reckon once Threadripper comes out, maybe for the first couple of weeks it'll be terrible, and then maybe after a month or two it'll settle down and be nice stable platform. It's probably going to end up like X99 where it's never the stablest thing ever, but the performance is huge. So yeah, the 3930K, to be fair, is not a slow CPU, and it has got 40 lanes, so you could still run 4-way with it and get decent scores. The majority of people on hardware bot only use quad cores anyway. Even a lot of them use quads for 3D. It's only if you want to get in that top 10% that you need like the 10 cores, and if you're running slower older GPUs like not 980 Ti's and stuff, but if you're running like a 680 or I don't know, a 6950 or a 6970 or a 5770, you don't really need a 10 core CPU because it's more about the GPU. Even in like Firestrike where you benefit massively from CPU score, I mean, if you've got a HD 5770, the score's going to be so low on the GPU that it's going to be more GPU bound anyway. So I remember when I went from a mainstream 2600K 3770K up to a 3930K, even that was after X99 came out, and I was still getting really, really decent scores, like way better than I was with the quad core chips. So you've still got another 50% extra cores on there over someone with a 4770K or a 7700K. The only thing they have is clock speed, so they'll beat you on all the legacies. But in Firestrike, Vantage, Time Spy, Unigine Heaven is more GPU based as long as using an older card. But yeah, most of the 3D marks, 11, Time Spy, Vantage, stuff like that, you'll be fine with a 6 core. Yeah, to be fair, 3930K is a beast of a processor. It's nice. I actually have one. I have one left, as well as a Xeon E5 1650, but I can't use them because the problem is the boards are like £1 million for an X79 board for like no reason whatsoever. The boards are just really expensive. Same with X58, to be fair. Decent boards are expensive when they get to that age, and there's loads of CPUs around, so they're in high demand for boards and low demand for CPUs, so the CPUs are really cheap, the boards are expensive. That's why when people say on forums, should I run my 7700K at 1.4 volts, it's like, well, to be fair, yes. You shouldn't be worrying about the CPU, you should be worrying about the motherboard, because in like 90% of cases, the board's going to die before the CPU. Unless you're Gregster, and you run your CPU at 1.5 volts underwater, and put it up to 1.6 for benchmarks, and it's sandy bridge, then it don't last very long at all. And the board's probably in better shape than the CPU, but whatever. I did just do a restart because it got the highest score last time after a fresh boot, so thought I might as well just try a fresh start again and see what we can muster up. GPU's this is GPU 1. Can I apply those things on my 1? Yes, good. Right. That's a pretty good deal, actually. The that MSI Big Bang X79, when I ordered my first Intel board, which was a Z77 M-Power, which is actually on the shelf just up there, they actually sent me one of those X79 boards by mistake. It's huge. It's XL80X, isn't it? And it has like a minigun on it. But apparently the person who I bought it off got mixed up at the shop that I bought it from, and they sent me a Big Bang instead of a Z77 M-Power, and I didn't say anything for a while because I'd bought this and a i5 2550K, which is the i5 2500K but with no iGPU in it, and and I really wanted a 3930K to put in it, but at the time they were like £500. So, and I bought the i5 for like 130. Board was 107, that's not too bad at all. That is really good for the board, is that? Because I got my Rampage 4 formula for £80. But that was back when X79 was at like rock bottom, because I remember I got mine for 80 and then my mate got his like a week later for 100, and we were both, he was running the Xeon and I was running the 3930K. I actually bought 3 3930Ks from CX for like 150 quid each and binned them. be fair, CX UK here, 30Ks are like 70 quid. Yeah, that's it. Well, at the moment, over there, I've got 3 X99 SoC champions because nobody wants to buy X99 boards at the moment. So I bought 2 more. I already had one. I bought 2 more and they're brand new in box. Never even touched them. They're literally sitting there. I'm just waiting for everyone's X99 board to die. And I'll stick those on eBay, 200 quid each, in maybe a year or 2. Loaded. Just need to wait for the rest of the X99 boards that are being used to sort of dry up first though. Like now is actually a good time to buy X99. There was a guy on the OCUK forum selling his 5820K for like 180 quid, I think it was, a while ago. Pretty decent chip for 180. It's cheaper than a Ryzen. Yeah, I know. That's it. I've got 3 Z77 boards. I had 4 at one point. 2 of them are dead. The M-Power's dead. My ASRock OC formula's dead. My only one I've got left working is a UD5H. And I put a UD3H in my little cousin's PC, so 5820K for 220 is pretty good actually. But then again, a Ryzen 5 1600, you can have that for £195, brand new with warranty. Basically the same performance. So I wouldn't pay £200 for a 5820K. The only thing the 5820K has more of, PCIe lanes, and even then you can only run 3-way SLI instead of 2. Personally I'd get the 5820, but Z97 boards are pretty cheap at the moment. If you want Z170 or Z97, buy them now. Oh, that was 2 years ago. In that case that was a decent deal. Although actually they went up loads, didn't they? They were like 220 brand new, weren't they? Or was it 250 brand new? No. They were 280 to 290 brand new. Then the 7700K was more expensive. And then Brexit happened, and then they moved the price up above the 7700K, that was it. 380, that's insane. Yeah, that is the problem, Gary, sometimes is the time. We ain't getting anywhere with this. Why? Vantage does not like the Ryzen CPUs at all. I think we've done everything else. Don't think there's anything else I can really do with this system now. I do have GPU pile here. Could do that. Not very exciting to watch though, is it? Tell you what, the BIOS on those DFI boards, insane. I can't work them out. I've got a DFI 775 board and it's pretty hardcore, I have to admit. I have no idea what anything is. They're really good though. It's just knowing how to work them that's the issue. Here we go, GPU Pi 1B. So I want it in 20 and 128. Go. 19 seconds is the record. Wow, that is good value for DDR4. I'd just sell it straight on though. 25 seconds, okay. Now with GPU Pi, if no one's ever run it before, basically you want as much GPU core clock as possible and literally nothing else. Like 400. See what happens. Just go for it. Boom. I'll bring you into the screen a bit so you can see what's going on with the GPU Pi, because it's unfortunately not very exciting. I need OBS up as well. Let me just change the background to white. Possibly too bright. Try that blue. Come on. Tool of a camera. There we go. You see what's going on now? See what clocks these things are at. Here we go, core clock 1306, 1411, look at that, and 1346, so the gigabyte one, which is GPU 2, is way too slow. Go. See you, Gary, thanks for tuning in. GPU's head's broken because the graphics cards are so fast. Running at like 1400 megahertz. I think 1411 and 1385. Wait a second. This is one of those where you have to save a result file. Right, let's try again. Go. I like it how 9 people are watching. We run GPU Pi, which is like the most boring benchmark ever. "23 seconds, they're getting a bit faster now. I forgot to put my note on the last screenshot. Whatever, because this one's higher. Both at 1411 megahertz on the cores. I'm going to try doing a different reduction size this time. I don't know what on earth that guy was using on Hardware Bot. He's managed to do it in 19 seconds. Oh, he had a massive memory overclock, that's weird. Yeah, everyone's overclocking the memory for some reason. Maybe I might try that. Try 601 on the memory with like 1400 on the cores. Lol. It's gonna be pretty funny. See, when it gets to batch 4, mine slows down loads, whereas theirs doesn't. Ah, they're not using the 64-bit version. I don't think. I think they're using normal GPU Pi maybe. Let me see. No, doesn't make a difference. It's still slow on my system. For some reason when it gets to batch 4, slows down loads. They must be running some kind of tweak. I have no idea how they're doing this. There's no way they can be boosting more than 1400 megahertz, surely. See, on that fourth batch, noticeably slower. They're at like 3.2 seconds and mine's 3.8. Then by batch 12 they're on 11.3 and I'm on like 12.5. How weird. Should really get a capture card, but they're too expensive at the moment. $1463 megahertz. I wonder if there's like some kind of WASA like there is for SuperPi 32M where you have to like balance the two cards. Oh, I've got it down to 22.5 now anyway. Everyone's leaving now. So they don't like GPU Pi because it's boring. I agree. What were they at that time? 1502 megahertz on GTX780 as well. Go up another 30-ish megahertz. Invalid. Ooh. Ah. Clocks of the cards are different. Try again. See, you jinxed it, Matt. Or Mark, rather. You jinxed it, you said 10, 11, oh, and then it went down. What is going on with this, this GPU2 is going crazy. Oh, there we go. Slowing the wrong one down, that's why. Let's try again. Go. Nope. That's not gone well. 15 megahertz. Pretty damn fast. Can't really see very well, unfortunately. That better? For anyone who's left. MSR afterburner on screen probably didn't help. Boo. We'll go with whatever we got. Right then. I think that's probably it for today. It's actually quite late. Well, it's not that late, but it's late for a stream anyway. We've done well over 4 hours of streaming today. So I think that's a fairly decent effort. I'll just show you the rig for one last time. There it is, Ryzen 7 1800X, 780 SLI, 1080 radiator. And that is it, people. The webcam is even warm. Right then, I'll see you all in the next live stream, whenever that is. Yeah. Right mouse. Goodbye. Have a good rest of your day or evening or whatever it is. See ya.